Welcome to the next webinar for healers. And today we're gonna really drop right in. Most of you know me by now. You're getting familiar with me. If not, I'll remind you, send you a link out to something. I've muted all of you. You have the power to unlock yourself, to unmute yourself rather, and feel free to do that when you want to ask a question. One of the best ways to get the most out of these meetings is to ask as many questions as possible. First, just I want to make sure everybody can hear me. So if you can hear me, Neil, put your thumb up if you can hear. Okay, great. Thanks. I'm going to make this a fairly tight one today. We're going to move as quickly as possible. So let's just discuss what we're going to talk about. And again, if you want to ask questions, please use the chat window. That's the most effective way. That way I can address it at any point when it's appropriate. If you don't have access, if you're accessing this through the telephone or something like that, go ahead and unmute yourself and just ask the question when I ask if anybody has any questions. Today we're going to talk about designing packages and offerings, or your series of sessions. And just as a review, there's three critical components to building your six-figure practice. One is to have a comprehensive offering or series of sessions. The second is to have a sales system and actually use it. We'll present one next week. You don't have to use mine. It is one that's been incredibly effective though, so I recommend you use mine. But really, if you're using anything, systematically, you want to make sure that you're doing that so that you know at a meta level what the next step is and you can guide the client there. And the third, of course, is to give free, accessible, and valuable content, much like today, or like an evening workshop, or demo, or puja, or whatever it may be, but to have game nights, whatever it may be, so that people have a deep sense of you. And we're going to talk about the two things you must do to have those events be really a river of prospects for you. And in that, we'll talk about the 4 learning styles. So it'll give you a format to design a talk or anything really, any sort of exercise, in a way that has it virtually write itself, if it's an area in which you have deep knowledge around. And then a couple of secrets to presenting that should resolve some of your anxiety pretty much instantly. There's still some other things that you need to do with your mind often, especially since more people in America, so it always makes me laugh. More people fear death, fear public speaking than death. So of the 3 phobias in America, the top 3, the first one is public speaking, is death, and the third one's spiders. I think that's hilarious. I used to be one of those people though, so I can relate. Although I don't think I feared it more than death, but it was right up there. Of course, I'm also going to talk about the B School beginning in April. I do these webinars and live talks for 2 reasons. One is I'm here to provide value such that it transforms your life and your business for the better, whether we ever see each other and our paths cross again or not. And the second is I'm obviously here to promote my courses and services, and that's a very light touch at the end. So I'm committed to delivering value. By the way, there really is 3 things you must do. So should be a number 3 there. I added one when I was reviewing this morning. So let's drop right into it. The reason you want to design a comprehensive offering, and a lot of people get caught up on this, a lot of people have some fear, if I'm only doing this big thing, this package, whether that's 12 sessions or heck, even 6, are people really going to sign? Am I going to lose business? Am I going to lose the session by session stuff that's been, for some of them, hand to mouth, but for some of them, feeding them, paying their bills, it's worked enough, but they're always sort of worried about it. There's 2 reasons you do it. One is because the client gets sustainability of change. There's no way, and it's easy to frame this with a client, by the way, there's no way for them really experience the unfolding, the transformation, the evolution that they desire and deserve, that you can provide them by going session by session. It's simply impossible. And they're making decisions all the time. It's almost irresponsible of you to let them go session by session, because they're making choices on limited information all the time. The other is that you hold a constant context for change and transformation. You're almost like a truing element for them. And you get financial stability, but it also serves the client because you can begin to think about them. You can relax. You think several sessions ahead. You're not worried about whether or not they're going to show up next week in the session. All those reasons. So why you do it. Somebody asked in the last webinar, how do you sell that? We'll talk about that in a little bit, but I'll just say it's actually pretty easy, because if you start with the principle of telling them the truth, and that's that they're not going to get the change that they need by going session by session, that really they need this process. It's really a process. I'm in favor of truth being the best tool of influence around. There's no gimmicks to the truth. It's just, it's the truth. But how do you design it? So I'm going to get a little bit geeky here, but just, some of this will make sense, some of it won't, but hopefully it'll all make sense near the end. The first thing you want to do is think about stages and phases that people go through. So if you've worked with somebody over a long period of time, or if you've maybe in your own evolution, or maybe you've some sort of systemic stage progressions. Piaget is the easiest one to look at. Everybody's familiar with Piaget. There's a sequence that people go through. That's true in anything, though. It's true whether it's athletics and you're, first year in high school, and then you're in college, and then you're in, say, the NFL, or you're an amateur, and then you're in pro-am, and then you go professional and go to the Olympics, or whatever it is. You don't start off as an Olympic athlete. There's stages and progressions you go through. This isn't a judgment. You wouldn't judge somebody who wasn't at the stage of Olympic athlete competing. You wouldn't go, well, they're only in the NCAA. Ha ha ha. It's not a judgment. It's an assessment of skill, and it's an assessment of the capacities that they have. So I just want to make sure that we keep our mind on that. But there's a logical progression to it as well. So I recommend 3 to 6 months. You don't need to get all caught up on having it be 6 months, by the way. Some people have in the past, largely because I haven't explained my own progression. I didn't start off by doing 6-month programs. It took me a while as well. And part of it is it will authentically and organically build itself out. So you'll come up against a limitation with a client. You'll go, oh, well, they also needed this. And the next program will be a little bit longer. But you do want to start with something at least 6 sessions, and you'll quickly run into the limitations of it. You'll go, gosh, we really needed 9, but you'll know why. So don't get too caught up on creating something that's really long. For heaven's sakes, don't try to do a 1-year program if you've never done one of these before. And even 6 months. Give your grace around your own evolution, your own stages of development professionally with that. But it is a logical progression. For instance, you wouldn't, let's say somebody just had a divorce. You wouldn't immediately start teaching them dating techniques and having them go out and date. You'd probably have them resolve grief and maybe resentment, maybe something towards the, whatever gender they were in a relationship with. Maybe they've got some stuff there. They've made some generalizations, men are, or women are, or gosh, all relationships are, or whatever. They've got some stuff going on, and that's going to be right here for them every time they talk to somebody. You probably want to resolve that first. And then, you want to talk about maybe how to date and some values elicitation, maybe some, just general dating skills, questions to ask, where to put their attention, all of that. And then really third, you talk about conflict resolution and deepening their connection and, all of those, right? There's a logical progression there. That's true for anything that you can offer. I'll say that. I had one for you, Neil, but I'll do it privately. So any questions about that? Questions about anything I've said so far, or any reactions? Okay, let me lay out what I mean by holarchies. There's that big word holarchy in the last, and this will just sort of flesh out stages for you so you can think about it. Holarchy is each one transcends but includes the former, and each a whole unto itself. If you're an integral geek, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're not, and you've been confused by that, this should explain it. That's a really bad one to start with. So there's instinct, and then intellect, and then intuition. Right? There's a ever increasing stages of wholeness. We could think about it as well, or height, or if you prefer depth. They're the same, really the same thing. They're just different metaphors, by the way, height or depth. Some people have challenges with height. Again, they think it's ranking or judging. It's really not. And depth is a fine metaphor for it. Vengeance to justice to grace, which is one of my favorites to really explain this, or revenge to justice to grace. Stages of increasing wholeness, egocentric to ethnocentric, or gender-centric to world-centric. With ethnocentric, you could also add in nationalistic. These are stages, again, of increasing expanse, increasing wholeness. And a very simple one's body, mind, and spirit. Now let's take a look at chiropractic. And I walked into a chiropractor's office one time and I saw they had stages. Here's the sheet they give you, and first one's get you out of acute pain. That's first. That's the first stage of your chiropractic care. Second one's increased mobility, right? And then the third one is ongoing adjustments, additional subluxations, optimal alignment, whatever you want to call it. But those are stages. They can't start at stage 3. It's impossible. They have to start at stage 1. So it is with anything you're doing, whether it's sexual healing, whether it's in the kink domain, whether it's relationship coaching, whatever it is, there's going to be a logical progression of stages. There's skills that you need to teach first, or a context you need to set first. So the packages can, again, if it's an area of deep knowledge for you, they can almost write themselves. So I want you to, and all you need is a basic framework, by the way. You don't want to get too detailed. In fact, my EvolveCo website is a fairly bad example of how to write this. One of my former clients, Lindsay Chrysler, she probably has one of the cleanest, highest level. It's 3 stages, and it's on relationships. LINDSEY or AYCHRISLER.com. I'll put in the chat window or something at some point. But she's sort of the opposite, contrasting, but a pure example of how to do this and have it just be fleshed out by the client. So you just need a basic framework so they understand that you're coming from a framework, which, by the way, has you seem a lot more confident and credible, which doesn't hurt. Someone, as I said, someone in the webinar last time asked, well, how do you do this and how do you sell it? Especially for sexual healers, she was asking. And really, it's about the art of pre-framing. And pre-framing begins, by the way, with the frequently asked questions page on your website, which is probably the least used and most powerful pre-sales tool you can have to really set context for people, or set, I don't know what else you want to call it in terms of it, but the FAQ is just so powerful. And really, any question that keeps coming up, you want to just add it to your frequently asked questions page. If people keep asking, well, what about this? You just address it. My FAQ, you've probably seen a version of my FAQ somewhere because so many people have modeled it at this point that I've had people email me go, hey, this person's using it. It looks like you. And I said, yeah, they were clients. I've been getting that a lot lately. Some of that's great, some of that's not. You do want to have it be your own language. You want it to seem authentic for you. And the structure, though, of the EvolveCo FAQ is a really great one. And very few of those questions and answers, I would say, don't address them at all. You can, of course, add more, particularly if you're involved in any kind of touch or sexual healing or anything involving energetics. You want to make sure that people understand that. But you can include everything from why you don't really talk about rates to where to park. But you just want to make sure that the person is set up, and you want to make sure, next week when we talk about the actual sales system, you want to make sure they're set up for the exploratory session. That's the essential part of it. Included in that is that you only work in these longer packages, and you just tell them why. You just tell them the truth. But also, when people, it's easy to talk to clients about it. You wouldn't go to the chiropractor once and expect all of your, back problems to be resolved, or the acupuncturist once and expect all of your health issues to be resolved. Or, a physical trainer, you wouldn't go once and think that you're going to transform your body in one session. Or lose a bunch of weight or gain a bunch of weight, whatever you're looking to do, gain a bunch of muscle. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to happen in progression. Now, maybe you don't need to see the trainer 3 times a week. I don't really need to do that, partly because of my basic knowledge. But seeing them once a week is a darn good idea, still to make adjustments. They come up with stuff I'm unaware of because my information's out of date, or just to keep you on track. But the touch point there, again, holding the context for them. So, my favorite thing to do is simply tell people the truth. It's really, really is. I'm not sure why people are so caught up on not, but it is the best thing to do for you in the whole process. In that is simply telling them that they're not going to get the change they want. They're going to have outcomes. This whole thing, by the way, is driven by their outcomes. We'll talk next week about how you're not next week, March 6th, so 10 days from now. You're not selling your services. You're helping them to sell themselves and their own outcomes and what that makes possible. So that makes it really easy. All you need to do is talk about what it's going to take. You want to be honest and fair about that. You don't want to, say, well, this is going to take a year or something, but you also want to be realistic about it. You'll get better and better at that, by the way, over time. Just like I, virtually never have a session go over an hour anymore. I have sort of an internal clock, so everything's designed. But I've had 400 clients through 6-month programs. That took me about 100 clients to get that really well honed. So, that'll get shaped over time for you. It's a skill. Okay. Questions about that? Questions about packages, offerings, about why to do it, about how to do it? How am I doing? I'm noticing I'm talking really fast. How are you guys doing? Can you guys understand me? Yeah? Okay, great. Thanks, Neil. All right, so let's talk about talks and intros, demos, game nights, any of that. Anything where people are, or webinars, anything where people they're getting that first component from you, which is where you're getting your prospective clients from. There's 3 things you've got to do to have them essentially be just a flowing, river, at least a good stream, a good babbling brook of prospective clients. And they are these. First, pre-frame the reasons for being there, just like I did. But what you're going to say is, I'm here for 2 reasons. One is to provide, value or depth or, new skills such that your love life or your sex life or your health or whatever it is transformed for the better, whether we ever see each other again or not. And second, I'm obviously here to market my services. What that means to you is at the end, I'll pass around an interest sheet. And that's something that, you'll do physically if you are in person. If not, at the end, like I'll do today, you tell people how to contact you. It is better, and we'll talk about why not next week, March 6th. It is the next webinar. Let's go with that one. The next webinar. We'll talk about why it's better to actually, have that in your control. Partly because they get all sorts of reasons they may or may not follow up on that, and you really want to make sure that you're being of service. But the second is to deliver solid value. And I really mean that. All this, you've probably been to one of these weekend things where we're just constantly pitching from the stage. Cool, it's free, you got a bunch of value, but it's almost aesthetically abrasive, and you sort of just get tired of the sales pitches constantly. And it's okay to say, when I work with clients or, in the course we'll talk about or whatever, but you don't want to just be constantly pitching. You want to provide value. You want people to walk away and go, gosh, that was amazing for some free thing. Now, I'm going to stop for a minute and address the free or low cost thing because it comes up for people. I tested that for a while. At first, I just wanted to make sure people showed up. So I thought, well, if I charge a certain amount of money, they'll show up. And I found that to not be the case at any price point where I felt comfortable charging for an evening, which is basically up to $25. Anything over 3 hours, you could probably charge more for, but that ends up being really a workshop. So that's a different conversation. And ultimately, I just ended up not wanting any kind of barrier between me and the people attending. So I just do this stuff for free. Now, if it's something like a game night or a puja or a demo involving any kind of, or erotic, energetic, sexual skills, anything like that, where people are sort of, they're excited and a little nervous to come, you can probably charge a little money for that and it won't impact anything. Mostly because they expect it. I ultimately just worked into my business, that some people say, well, what about the cost of the room and all? It's like complaining about the 3% that PayPal charges for you to swipe a credit card. Who cares? It's just, it's part of the business. At first, there are some concerns for people with that, but ultimately, you sign one client to an extended program and you start to realize how silly all those little worries are. They just become irrelevant as you become more prosperous. And then the third thing is really just follow up on the promise of the first thing, which is pass that darn interest sheet around or give them a way to contact you. Or, you run a contest or you give, the first 2 people who contact you for a call, get some free thing, anything like that, where they're inspired to contact you. That's the way to manage it with a webinar. There are some things that are not translatable over webinar. I think anything involving erotic, sexual, or energetic skills, it's just much more difficult. This obviously lends itself very well. Also, while it's definitely possible, and I've certainly had the experience recently of getting clients through webinars, one-on-one clients, they do get a deeper sense of you in person. Now, I used to say that, you don't get clients this way. I'm not going to say that anymore. It is better for selling courses and products, but it's not a either or kind of thing. Teleseminars, definitely really not, unless you're doing huge volume, like there's a couple hundred or 1,000 people on the call. Then sure, you're going to get one-on-one clients just from the nature of the numbers and probabilities. But for a group of 4, 12, 20, you really want to lend yourself at least to video and preferably in person. So unless it's about a course or a product. Questions about that? Okay. Oh my gosh. Okay. Let's just go down these. So 2 secrets to presenting. One is that nobody knows how it's supposed to go but you. So people get all worried. And it's like, you're the only one with the outline, right? If you just have your attention on what you said, like, frankly, I copied and pasted from the lead page, right? What did I say I was going to say? Put that there. That was easy, and then of course, obviously I built it from there. There's, 25 slides here or something, there was only 4 bullet points on the page, but it wrote itself just making sure I delivered on the promise in the marketing, which is critical. You always want to deliver on the promise, by the way, in the marketing. It seems like common sense, not sometimes. Because, you get caught up in just stuff you want to say or stuff that you think they need to know, but really people just want you to deliver on what you said you were going to do. And that's easy to do. So nobody knows how it's supposed to go. The other is you should check in with your body, and is it really anxiety? Sometimes it's an interpretation error. Maybe it's just your body preparing you to act, to perform, adrenaline. If you talk to any performer who's going to go out on stage, they're pretty amped up. That's not because they're nervous necessarily. But if you're not used to it, you might think, oh my gosh, I've got stage fright or whatever. Now, if you're actually having full-on panic attacks, you're sort of fading out, then maybe it's a anxiety thing, and we can resolve that. In fact, we'll do it first in the course. The whole first month is spent on emotions and self-esteem. But those are the two secrets. One is it may not actually be anxiety, checking with your body. But the second is really nobody knows how it's supposed to go. Nobody knows how it's supposed to go, except for you. The 4 learning styles, which for some reason didn't make it in the slide, but they don't need to be in the slide. 4 learning styles, people learn in different ways, and they are these. Some people are just information junkies. They care about what. Some people are, they understand the what, but they just want to know why. Why they should care, why it's important. And the third, they immediately understand those, but they want to get to the how. It's like great. Give me an exercise, do a demo, something like that. They want to get to the how, or it could be steps or bullet points. And then the 4th group, they really are only inspired by vision, which is sort of just imagine what all this makes possible. So what, why, how, and what if. And you can just cycle through those. You can simply use those to create your talk. What are you going to talk about? Why should they care? How do they do it? What are the steps? What are the bullet points? What are the things to know? Or have them, do an exercise or both to experience that. And then what it makes possible. A couple things on that last one. One is if you have a good group, just ask them. Just ask the group, what do you see makes possible here? Hands will go up and it'll be great. It'll be amazing. If you don't have a really active group, or if it's a small group, or if you're in a situation like this where it doesn't make sense to turn the mic on for everybody, then you want to simply lead them. Just imagine what it will be like to have these skills, and just imagine how it'll transform your business and transform your personal life. And you can get specific about that and whatever the context is you're speaking in. And they will. And that's more of a, leading with some, I'll talk about hypnosis very briefly. What's hypnosis? Hypnosis is simply directing someone's experience with language. Anytime you're in a conversation with somebody, it's hypnosis. Hypnosis is not this. Well, it could be, but that's not what we're talking about. And frankly, I think it's a little silly sometimes. But hypnosis is simply directing someone's experience with language. Anytime you ask a question, if you ask somebody how their weekend was, you've just hypnotized them. So let's just dispense with the whole thing about hypnosis being something spooky. Or at least that's what I mean when I say hypnosis, is we're directing someone's experience with language, often with questions. So you simply do that at the end if you have a small group. So let me demonstrate the 4 learning styles using the 4 learning styles. So what we're going to talk about are the 4 learning types or styles. And the reason you should care, why it's important, is because it will allow you to virtually write any talk that you need to with ease. It'll practically write itself. It will also keep the whole audience engaged. So, it'll keep those 4 types engaged. So your audience stays engaged and you easily write the talk. And the way you do that, the how, is you cycle through these 4 styles in this order. What, why, how, which is a demo or an exercise or bullet points, and what if. And just imagine how much easier it will be for you to create talks at a moment's notice in an area that you have knowledge, and how much more at ease you'll feel when you get asked to talk, maybe even at a moment's notice. So that's demonstrating the 4 types, using the 4 learning types. Any questions about that? Any comments, any observations, any reactions? And feel free to use the chat window. If you do, don't if you don't. Questions, comments, observations, reactions. Going once. Going twice. Cool. Good. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about evolutionary sales, mostly because it's the next webinar. And then I'm going to talk about the dates for the next webinars and the course, and talk a little bit about the course. In the background, if you think of any questions you have about designing packages or, oh, you know what? Actually, let me talk a little bit about marketing lead time, I think, for you. Cool. I'll definitely, let me talk about marketing lead time. This is something that I think people get tripped up on. What I've noticed is the sweet spot for lead time on marketing for events like this is 10 days. The reason, and you want to do it, 10 days before, and then 7 days before, or 3 days before, or both. Depends on how much engagement you want and where you're publishing to. If you're publishing to a community list, you want to make sure you're obeying whatever rules there are. If you're on a Yahoo group or Google group or anything like that, where they allow marketing, you want to make sure you're following the rules. Or you have a darn good reason not to, that you can explain yourself. But the perfect lead time is 10 days. Here's why. At 14, over 14, they're not ready to make plans yet, especially here in the Bay Area. There's so much opportunity to do different things. Less than 7, and they may have already made plans. They've got plans for that night. So 10 days is really the ideal time. 7 at the last minute. You can, of course, do the day before or whatever, only. But I recommend 10 days, 7 days, or 3 days, or both, and then the night before or the morning of. Some of you saw a video from me this morning. Maybe you saw an email from me this morning. That was the last, reminder and push for this one. So it allows you, and this is part of, if you were on the last webinar, you know that what you need to do is do 2 of these a month. That's how the numbers work out. You do 2 of these a month. You sign 2.5 clients as a result to a extended program. And in 6 months, you're on pace to make $108,000 in the following fiscal year, assuming a couple of things. And the primary one is that you're charging at least $150 an hour, which here, of course, is almost low if you're good. And it's where a lot of people are starting at, people just coming out of their certifications. So that's the quick thing on marketing lead time. Evolutionary sales, which is going to be a pretty intense, I would call this one light compared to what the next webinar is going to be like. I'm going to lay out the whole sales system for you. So, when I got into this business, I knew that I knew that it was possible to have a sales system that didn't leverage any fear or scarcity. I knew, and I just generally have a distaste for that. And it had to come from service and contribution. It should have a foundation of vision and possibility, inquiry, not manipulation. And it needed to be clean enough, in my opinion, clean enough that you can be transparent about your sales tactics to any prospective client. If they say, is that a sales tactic? You can say, yes, it is. And here's why it serves you. Here's how it serves you. Here's why I use it. To me, that's, by the way, the litmus test for ethical sales. Can you be transparent about your tactics? Are you willing to be? Now, it could be that if you're unwilling to be transparent about the tactics, that you just don't understand it enough. And you go, well, so-and-so just said it works. In which case, you just need to look a little bit deeper to the organizing principles. And maybe there's one that does serve the client. Or maybe you should ditch that technique. If you're using hypnotic anchoring or anything like that, anything that, like if you're the pickup artist of sales, oh God, please don't use any of that crap. You don't need to. You don't need to. But in a phrase, I needed to create a system that passed the holistic smell test. And that starts with the organizing principles. So let me just give you a little taste, a little preview of evolutionary sales. And if you haven't seen my piece about how every human being is a philosopher and what organizing principles are, that's worth a read. And if you just search, Jason McClain, organizing principles, or every human being is a philosopher, you'll find it somewhere on the web. But here they are. You're not closing a deal. You're opening a relationship. I'm not really sure where people came up with closing a deal. It certainly wasn't in a service-based industry, though, where you're just starting when they sign. Notice how that shifts, though, your orientation to the thing. Right? If you're opening a relationship, it's different than closing a deal. It feels different, too, and you will behave differently, which is what organizing principles are really about. is around how you organize your behavior under this philosophical principle. And we all have those. Most of them are just out of our awareness. Most of them are unconscious, picked up from their hand-me-downs, from our culture or from our parents or from our community or church or temple, whatever it is. Here's the second one. You're not selling your services. Which, by the way, this one removes all the sort of, I don't know what you would call it. It's been so long, but adversarial. Any adversarial dynamic. You're not selling your services. You're not trying to convince them that you're the person to help them. You're guiding them to sell themselves on their outcomes and what that will make possible in their life, or their business, or their sex life, or their relationships, or whatever. What it makes possible. That's what they're buying. They're not buying your services. Now, your services, you have to be congruent that they can help, and it has to be accurate. You have to be certain, essentially, that you can help them. If I'm not, I just tell people that's not my area, or I could, but I won't, or I know some stuff, but I haven't mastered that area yet. I just tell them directly before they sign, so that they know what my area is and what it isn't. But then the third one is to demonstrate competence, and through that, and by demonstrating the cogency of your offering. Cogency is a highfalutin word I won't get rid of. It essentially means that it makes sense to them. It's intellectually compelling. So, the whole sales thing about how people buy for emotional reasons and they justify with logic, I mostly disagree. And you want to, if you use that stuff, if you use that approach to sales, you're going to have some buyer's remorse. And there's two contexts in which you do not want people to have buyer's remorse. One of them is when they give you a lot of money. I think we all know what the second one is. And then the fourth is to embody the fact that the money is secondary. So lots of little ways that we do that in the evolutionary sales system. And we'll talk about all those next week. But for me, this really demonstrates that it passes the holistic smell test. This is also the principles around which the system was designed intentionally, sort of reverse engineered it. Questions about that, organizing principles, or you'll have a lot more questions next week if you join us to actually see the system. Okay. Here are the upcoming webinars. Friday, March 6th, we'll talk about the evolutionary sales system. I think I've said enough about that. Friday, March 13th, also at noon, will be troubleshooting your practice. And that'll just be where you get to come and ask me questions for an hour. And I will probably have an answer for you. Could be anything from weird situations with clients where you're like, how do I deal with this? To ways to structure your practice that you're unclear on because, because you're still building it and you're still figuring it out. But really anything will be appropriate in the context of building your practice or client relations. And it could be, anything, really, anything. It could be how to market something. So just the whole range. Bring all of your questions. And then Tuesday, March 24th will be one that we had scheduled, but we've moved it to the future, and it is beliefs, your future in invisible ink. Your beliefs they're always present in your language. That's the thing. And a lot of people don't realize that they're beliefs. They hold them as real. And they'll say things like, well, people aren't ever going to, or I'm not sure that I, can blank, or whatever it is, or men are, or women are. Any globalized, by the way, generalization, which always contains the verb to be. So women are, men are, society is, those are going to be global general beliefs, which are, by the way, never true. That's right. I used a global statement to talk about global statements not being true. Yes, they're never true. They're never true. They're always going to be incomplete, partial, inaccurate when you get down into anything involving individuals. And then one more troubleshoot your practice, Friday, April 3rd. Mark your calendars now. They're all at noon. March 6th, March 13th, March 24th, and April 3rd. Here are the dates for the course. April 18th and 19th, we begin with your foundation, clearing out fear, anxiety, guilt, beliefs about money and spirituality being in conflict somehow, beliefs about your own worth. We'll look at your worthiness of receiving, which is all inside of you. It's nothing we can do to assist you in believing that you're worthy of receiving. It's a matter of you accepting that you already are. And then, of course, building the other component of your self-esteem, which is knowledge of your competence. That happens over time. That's contextual, like that. It's the difference between, by the way, value and worth. We'll get into that distinction as well. And personal and practical, which is why so many people suffer when somebody doesn't do something, they take it personally. Do something, sign, show up for a workshop, anything like that, people take it personally. It's because they've got those two domains collapsed. It's a simple self-esteem distinction. Simple. It's one I created after some thought. And then we'll spend March 16th and 17th designing or honing your offering. This seems to have been the most confronting aspect, believe it or not, for people that I've worked one-on-one with and in courses. And this will be the 4th or 5th time I'm delivering this course in some form. Okay. Lost audio is back now. Okay, great. What's the last thing you heard? Where did it cut out? Because could you give me a little more than that? Well, I'll just talk about the second weekend. So May 16th and 17th, designing your offering. We're spending a whole week on that because it seems to have been the most confronting aspect for people I've worked one-on-one with or in courses. This will be the 4th or 5th time fifth time I've delivered this course in some form. Of course, it looks nothing like it did, 6 or 8 years ago when I first delivered it, but it's just gotten worlds better. But we want you to leave with that having been designed so that you've got that complete. And then the following weekend, June 13th and 14th, you're going to practice the evolutionary sales system. I'll demonstrate twice. I'll demonstrate before lunch. We'll eat lunch. You guys will practice, and then I'll demonstrate again. And you guys will practice again. You'll practice in groups of 3. You'll get lots of practice in each perceptual position. And then we'll have you write and deliver and market your introductory evenings, workshops, webinars, whatever it is. And you want at least 2 talks that you can deliver, or 2 demos that you can do, or 2 pujas you can put on, but with different labels, different names, different things that people are getting from it, different marketing hooks. And then August 8th and 9th, which is probably the most important weekend, we'll put it all together and we'll have a party. So it'll be the most fun one. It'll be an open frame. We'll practice whatever we need to practice. We'll review the entire course. And anything that you guys need more information on, usually there's sort of a group thing like, yeah, we need to know more about this, and I'll say some stuff that's, informative, valuable, and second nature to me, but not for you. Probably transformative for you and your business. In between each weekend, by the way, there'll be 2 webinars like this, but not like this. It'll be, drilling into the distinctions that you learned in the previous weekend and helping you integrate it so that you're certainly not on your own. You'll have a practice partner or an accountability buddy or whatever you want to call it. I will be on those webinars. I will be fielding the questions, by the way. It won't be an assistant they'll be there, but it'll be me. I'll have direct access to me. The reason that we're capping this course 20 people is because I want to be able to give as much attention to everybody's questions and their integration as possible. there'll be a Facebook group and stuff for you to ask questions as well, and I will be in there. I'll be the one checking it out. So I'm providing the answers for you as they arise and as they are appropriate. Questions about logistics, upcoming webinars. Oh, it'll be 10 to 6 every day. Those are all Saturdays and Sundays, Saturday and Sunday, each weekend from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. No boot camp or marches of death or Tony Robbins style. It'll be at 2nd and Bryant in San Francisco, which is where my office is at, right at the foot of the Bay Bridge in South Park, or near the Giants ballpark, if any of those things mean anything to you. But 2nd and Bryant, so easy to get to, 14-minute walk from a BART station, or obviously easily accessible by vehicle. On the weekends, there's tons of parking here, unless it's baseball season, and it won't. Well, it will be for part of that, but we'll have clear parking tips and instructions for you. Here's the promise of the course: is that you will have everything that you need to build your 6-figure practice. Knowledge, systems, structures. Oh, I meant to take that out, but oh well. And none of the excuses. So you really will have, you'll be clear if you haven't done it. If you're not on pace, you'll be clear about why you haven't. And we'll just put attention there. So it's pretty straightforward. Contacting me. First of all, the website for the course is healers.evolveco.com. You can go check it out. There's previous webinars there under the previous webinars menu item. If you want to contact me, you can contact me through that site. I see those emails. I answer those emails. Here are the links, by the way. Or if you just want to talk to me about doing one-on-one work, you can go to the Evolve Co main site, contact me through that. Now is a good time, by the way, to contact me about one-on-one work, because I just had 4 clients complete recently. So I have room, and I'm happy to speak with you about that and what that process would look like. Cool. Any questions, comments, observations, reactions, snide remarks, recommendations for sushi, anything like that? Anything anybody wants to share? If not, oh, whew, thank you, Ryan. If not, I will thank you for your time. You will get the video and the slides for this. So you'll be getting those hopefully by this time tomorrow. It will depend on how successfully the web export feature works this time. So the next webinar, I hope to see you on the next webinar, March 6th, Friday, a week from Friday. Yes, I'm gonna repeat this one. This is great. Neil said, "Thanks. Very helpful to have a framework for the framework." Yeah. That's great. It's fantastic. So feel free to contact me. I'm incredibly accessible, and I'd love to talk to you about the course. And I'll see you on the next webinar.